Good morning. My name is Danny Nusser. I'm a regional program leader for the North region of Texas. I actually work for Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. I have the opportunity to work with a very dedicated group of county agents that focus on educational programming and youth development. The Swine Project has been a very important project and one of the largest experiences in the 4-H program, and particularly important in the North region. We have a great number of families that utilize the Swine Project to raise their kids. It's a great way to spend time as a family. It's a great way to learn life skills and life lessons. We felt like it'd be beneficial to develop a series of educational videos that would focus on the basic things that you need to know about your swine project to be successful and reach your goals. Those being selection, nutrition, facilities, health, daily care, showmanship, and care at the show. These videos will be a great way for you to learn about the project, to get your project started, to help you throughout your experience. We're excited about bringing this series of videos to you and helping you get started in your swine project.
Hello, I'm Josh Brooks from the Texas AgriLife Extension Service in Hall County.
And I'm Jody Bradford from the Texas AgriLife Extension Service in Carson County. And today we're going to talk to you about your swine projects and a little bit about housing, facilities, different surface areas that might be used, as well as pen space and requirements that may be needed. One of the things that I have found with my kids feeding in the past over years is that I want it to be very easy, very accessible for my kids to get into the pens, to work with their project, as well as not have to get into the pens to do chores. I know that with this, a lot of times our kids are feeding before school, they maybe need to go feed before church or whatever, and I want them to be able to do chores and check on their projects without always having to get dirty. I like building alleys that are accessible to my pens that my kids can feed, check health, check water, check the things that they need to without getting in the pen. It makes it easier. Also, one of the other considerations that you need to think about when building a pen is how you're going to load that pig, how you're going to get that pig out of his pen to exercise him and do the things that you're going to need to do, as well as training him to drive, because the pig needs to know how to get out of his pen, and needs to know when he gets out of his pen, it's time to be a show pig and go work and show like we need them to. And they have to be able to get out easily, and that gate needs to be secured when you leave him in his pen. Yeah. I know that I like to use 5-foot tall panels in between my hogs for dividers for a couple of reasons, but the main reason is that I don't have to worry about a pig jumping over a 5-foot tall panel. If I'm doing something different with feed from pen to pen, or even in my 4-H facilities, I can set it up that way. If someone's hand feeding and limiting feed a little bit, that he's not wanting to jump over to the next pig's pen that's on full feed.
Going back to that loading and getting your pig out of the pen, good quality gates will make all the difference. Taking a panel and just wiring up will work, but going ahead and spending a little bit of extra money for a quality gate is probably going to make it a whole lot better. The stress of loading and unloading, that'll help with that stress if your alley is narrow enough that you can go ahead and drive him up there without him getting by you too much.
Josh, one of the things that I'll say about facilities is usually light gates that are easy to open, easy to close, maybe even being covered, maybe even being a nice heated facility is anything that people can do to make their facilities better. Not only is it better for their pigs, but it's usually a more enjoyable experience for the kids.
That's right.
They don't mind going in, turning on the light after the basketball practice or football practice, and being able to go in, work with their project, and still have an enjoyable experience.
Right, and I agree with that. Because that enjoyable experience part of it is going to be what keeps those kids and maybe the moms and or dads going to the barn and checking on those hogs all the time.
We can talk a little bit about different surfaces. I know that in my experience over the past 30 years, I've had a lot of different thoughts on that process from back several years ago, whenever we thought, oh, concrete was not the way to go, to now concrete being acceptable. There's a lot of different thoughts on that. My thinking is, and I have a lot of kids that feed on concrete. I like it. I have a lot of kids that feed on solid sand. I like that too. But it needs to be stay dry no matter what it is. If you feed on concrete, you need to be willing to keep it bedded, whether it be shavings, whether it be straw. There's a lot of different shaving options out there, but concrete probably needs to be bedded. The good thing about concrete is it is very easy to clean. Whenever there is a stopping point to cleaning concrete. Yeah. And it's easy to disinfect and get ready for the next year.
That's right. You know, when you just have a swine project on just solid dirt, you know, if you have a hut that's in there, you know, if it's under your barn, dirt is harder to get in and out, and it's harder to disinfect and get rid of those diseases that may get down into that dirt. Like you said, that's kind of why concrete is a little better. But if you've got one that's kind of got a little bit of joint problems, maybe that concrete doesn't work, you know, a dirt floor is an outstanding place. There's been many great hogs grown on dirt. It's according to which part of the world that you're in, probably, as far as you know, your accessibility to sand or the type of dirt that you're on. You know, in Hall County is mostly sandy. We can change the dirt often every year. Just go get a load of dirt and bring it in and change that out, and they're on sand. But maybe up here in Carson County, where the soil's a little blacker, it may be harder to change that soil out. You may need to move the whole you know, barn,
right,
you know, to get out of there.
One thing I will say about our clay, once it gets wet in the wintertime, and we drop and temperatures get cold, that clay goes to freezing. Sand will freeze also. Yep. And there's nothing that's harder on feet, Josh, than just frozen ground. Yeah. It gets real hard on their feet. They'll start having feet issues, hoof issues, pad issues. So with that being said, a lot of times, and I'll try to make a point to tell my 4-H kids that if it snows, I'd like them to shovel that snow out of their pen. Yeah. If they can, and there's times that they can't. I understand that. Or have another pen to move them to. Yep. Because it seems like that if you leave a pen alone, the snow will melt out of it, it'll get dry quicker than it is if they're walking on it. And those are just little things that I think that we come by. I sure don't want to discourage anybody, because you can make about anything work. And I will say that any facility will work and can work if you're willing to put out the effort that it takes to make it work. One positive thing about concrete, of many, is that most of our shows that we go to, those hogs are on concrete, our bears are show or around the show, they're bedded on concrete. So if they're on concrete, they're used to it whenever they get to the show, if concrete is what we're on. So
yeah, that's a good point.
If you have concrete or are going to pour concrete, make sure that the surface of it is rough enough that they can get some type of footing. You can sure go in and finish it where it's too slick and can have actually cause some structure issues with slipping and sliding. So concrete can be too slick. There are ways to bed it that would probably help, and some things that you can do if you already have a surface of concrete that you're wanting to use.
You know, if you're going to build a building, be sure that it can be used for something else whenever your project is finished. You know, the kids will be showing animals for maybe 10 or 12 years, it's according to how big your family is, and you definitely want that barn to be able to have a multiple use, to park your car in it, maybe make a shop out of it, you know, or build one that maybe can be taken down and used for something different. You know, if you're going to put $20,000 in a building, be sure that you're going to get the use of it afterwards. You know, make it multi-use when you get finished with the project. It's as small a pen or as big a pen as you have room for it. I think that's probably the main requirement. You know, if we're just going to talk about the most opportune way to put a hog in a pen, you probably want that pen to be 8 feet by 16 feet or 20 feet by 16 feet. Those are good quality sizes of pens, but it also goes back to, we talked about how much work that you want to put in it. You know, the smaller that pen, the more apt it is to get nasty, the more cleaning that you're going to have to do. The bigger that pen is, you know, he can go more days without maybe cleaning it as much. You know, if he's in a 8 by 8 pen or a 4 by 4 pen, that's not very much room for him. But they can grow great in that deal, but you're just going to have to do lots of work to keep that thing going. What do you think the opportunity?
You know, I've got a lot of my swine projects that are housed in totally confined indoor heated facilities that pen width is probably about 6 to 8 foot by 12 to 16 foot. May not be quite that wide, that long. I don't know what the most say this is the best. If they're in those type of tighter facilities, I think it is important that they get out and they're exercised more often. But again, Josh, I agree with you 100% that the smaller the pen, the more often they have to be cleaned, the worse they'll get, the quicker they'll get, and it may actually even be more expensive to keep them in smaller pens, having to change bedding more often. But again, I want to say you can make anything that you have, make it work for you is the most important thing. If you have a 4x4 pen and want to raise a swine project, I'm sure not going to tell you that you can't.
That's right.
And can't be successful at it and make it work. You know, a lot of my pens are 10 foot wide. My huts are 8 foot wide, but with the gate and the panels that we have available, it ends up that they're 10 foot wide. And again, that's because of what we have available to us. It works. The 8 foot huts, 10 foot wide pen, we make it work.
Yeah, and 10 foot wide is a good wide pen, plenty of space. You could almost put 2 pigs in there if you really want.
A lot of that does, and then if we talk about that, I'll say that I like feeding bears that are outside in huts. I like to feed 2 together for body heat.
Yep.
Their hair stays better. They generate heat from each other, which is important. But with that being said, I'll also add that at some point in time, to feed a bear, you have to be able to feed them separately, where you can monitor that bear's feed intake, weight gain, whatever, you'll have to be able to feed them separately at some point in the feeding period.
Yeah, so with that being said, you're going to need an extra pen at the end anyway, or a way to split the pen, or one way or the other.
Yes, sir.
And the other thing that we want to talk about is if you're going to try to feed a white hog, you definitely want to keep those white hogs out of the sun. They'll sunburn, you'll cause skin problems, their hair will be bad, and you want to try to keep those white hogs as clean as possible. And if they're outside in the elements, the mud gets a little deep out in a dirt pen, their legs are nasty. If you can keep them inside and control their climate just a little bit better, you'll have a little nicer hog at the end. The skin and everything will be better. If you, like in Hall County where we feed a lot of our hogs outside, usually we feed dark type of hogs. Those dark type of hogs can take the sunlight a lot better. They're usually better out on dirt just because, you know, it doesn't show as many stains and things like that. And so with that being said, if you plan on showing white hogs, that's going to be a little more added expense or a little bit added work. You can use shade cloths or tarps and build some kind of quasi huts to make those animals stay out of the sun or the direct sunlight and keep them from getting sunburned. You know, some of those York pigs or Chester pigs will come up with a spot if they get too much sun. Could come into classification issues, and so you definitely want to keep those hogs out of the sun. If you're going to feed outside, you definitely want dark hogs, or typically.
Josh, and that's exactly true on those white hogs, and keeping them inside, keeping their skin is so important. And I will also add too that dark hogs that are fed inside, all of a sudden you get them clipped down and their skin doesn't look quite right. So it's somewhat important for dark hogs to get some sunlight to their skin to get the color, to make them look dark and shiny and as pretty as they can also.
There's plenty of ways to raise a swine project outside, but you need a good quality shelter for them to be in, and those shelters, they make them in many different types, kind of Quonset looking huts. You can build your own out of tin and plywood or whatever, but what that thing needs to be is airtight. And if you can buy those Quonset huts that they sell, they're called pig huts, and there's 2 or 3 different companies that make those things are just a little airtight, more airtight. They're made for to house swine or livestock. You know, when you and I build one, Jody, we probably going to build a square front. It's going to be taller. Those Quonset huts hold the heat down a little closer to the ground, and you may need one of those even under a barn. I know there at Hall County, the ag farm is up on a hill, and the wind blows through there all the time, and so even under it's fully enclosed, we still have those hog huts underneath that barn just so those hogs can stay warm. And so that's something that needs to be thought about. That's the main part of this project as far as shelters and pens go. We're trying to keep that animal warm in the winter. We don't have a lot of heat after we get the pigs going. Usually maybe in the spring it'll get pretty hot, but we're trying to keep them warm just to keep them growing. If they're cold during the winter, they're trying to keep their body warm instead of grow, and so all that feed that you're putting in them is a bunch of their efficiency is going out of them. So when you're looking at your as far as your housing, get something that's going to be airtight.
I personally do like, even if I have kids feed in an open barn, I like for them to feed in some type of hut inside there, holds in that body heat. They may be able to put a heat lamp in there. I think that we did video a situation where I have a kid that's got a barn. At one time it was I think horse stalls,
Yep.
and they put two chemical soap shovels together and cut a hole in it. They can drop heat lamp in the top of it, and it gives those bears a little added extra insulation, I guess, if you will. But they regulate that heat. I've seen those bears. I'll go in there on cold days. They'll be inside there.
Yep.
Warmer days,
they're laying out under the...
Exactly. So they're going to get wherever it's comfortable to be.
Yeah.
To make sure that those pigs always have a dry place to lay in. A lot of times, feeding in huts, we create bad habits by bears. They'll get lazy. They won't always go outside and use the restroom, bears or gilts. And with that being said, you can break them of that habit, but a lot of times they'll get lazy and they'll use the restroom in their hut. And if that hut doesn't have some type of slatted floor in it or a way for that moisture to drain out of that hut, they're going to lay there in moisture all the time. I cleaned out our hut whenever I was a kid showing swine projects. We cleaned our huts out, all the bedding out weekly. I try to instill that in my kids, my 4-H kids, my personal kids. I know sometimes it's hard to do. Sometimes it's not fun to do, but I think that keeping good, clean, fresh straw is what we use for bedding in our huts is very, very important. And those floors in those huts allow moisture to leave, and those bears aren't always having to sleep inside there.
Yeah, and those floors could be like a solid piece of plywood or a piece of mesh wire or even maybe a slatted type floor.
Right. I would prefer them not to use solid plywood, because if it does get wet, a lot of times it'll get slick. But I have had them go in there and drill holes, a lot of holes in a piece of plywood, and put it down, and it works great.
Okay. As we talk about our pen setup, Jody, it's always good to have a place to exercise. I know out where I live, there's plenty of room. You don't have to have an exercise pen. You can just kind of let them roam free, get them outside of the pen. But in other places, maybe in a town or something like that, you may need an exercise pen. They're going to be in a pen whenever they go to the show, and so it's probably a good idea to make an exercise pen. That thing needs to be, 30 by 40 or so, to give them plenty of room to roam around and to practice your showmanship skills and to teach that hog to drive.
Yeah, Josh, that's real important. One thing that I would say is I don't know that sizes is important. Like I say, I would prefer just turning them out, being able to drive them anywhere. A lot of times a pen is necessary just for safety reasons. I would prefer it to be round so bears don't learn to get in a corner. I would prefer to have more than one gate to go into it, so they don't become gate sired, know where to come in, where to leave, things like that, because you don't want to create more bad habits than you already have. Stamina is very important with our bears and show pigs today. They have to be able to drive, and they have to be able to go for a while. They have to know how to drive. So whether that's an exercise ring or just turning them out into a pasture or an area and going, it's important to know whenever that gate opens that they are a show animal and can go. And stamina, the only way to get stamina in our bears and gilts is for them to exercise and go. And it's important for them to be able to. But one of the things that I'll say is try not to create bad habits by doing that. So make that exercise ring accessible to you, to your pens, if a ring is what you need, or area. How about that? We'll call it an exercise area. If you need a fence barrier, make sure it's round.
Next thing that we want to talk about in finishing our facility is you probably want to try to get access to a set of scales. You know, that set of scales needs to be to where you can put those hogs on and off that set of scales. When we get to the major shows, they're going to have to load on and off a set of scales. You probably don't want that set of scales to be down in a real narrow alley, because at the major show that thing's going to be kind of out in the open. You're going to have to drive your hog up into that set of scales. But maybe have a small alley or kind of a narrower alley to where you don't have to fight them all the time. Most of the time you get that pig into a routine where you weigh on Saturday or Sunday, and then you feed after. They usually run up there and get in that scale and then just get off and go back to the feed pan. They're kind of creatures that have it like that. But setting that thing up to where you'll have a place for your scales, but having a set of scales in your facility is a must if you're really going to get serious about showing animals.
I agree totally, Josh, that scales have to be something that we look for and have available. You know, over the years, our feeding kind of has changed a lot. A couple of things that I would say that are pretty important on facilities anymore would be a dry erase board. You know, almost all of my feeders have one. A lot of things that can do with it. Number one is if you change something you're doing on your feeding, you can write it down, you can put a pin down. I can go in there and I can look. If I changed this morning and decided I wanted to feed 6 pounds instead of 5.5 pounds, I can look on that board and I know exactly what I did, exactly what I need to do. Also, it gives your instructors, your county agents, ag teachers, whoever, a great parent leaders, whoever, a great opportunity when they come check your project, see things. They can leave little notes on that board, and maybe nothing more than, hey, you know, this is Josh, just want to let you know I came by today, everything looks great. But the main thing is that so you can stay consistent with your feeding program, you know what you've done. When you make changes, you can stay with that change, you know, as well as it's a great place for us to put down any more our medications. As far as that, you may need to medicate. You can keep track of that very, very easily. I want to talk just a little bit, just because I know how important it is about waters. And we don't think about our facilities all the time. We don't think about water as part of our facility. But water is one of the most, if not the most, important ingredient in feeding bears. I know in the Texas Panhandle in the wintertime, it can be an issue. A lot of our facilities don't have automatic waters or heated waters or whatever, and a lot of my kids still hand water in rubber troughs. I'll let you know it can be done. It's hard work. They're going to freeze, but they have to have water, and that water has to be checked at least twice a day, if not more often if possible. And with that being said, water is awful important in the summertime too, because pigs outside are going to turn it over. It gets hot, they're going to want to turn it over and lay in it. Well, then all of a sudden, Josh, they don't have water.
That's right.
So it's very important that we keep water in front of them. And it can come in a lot of different ways and varieties of ways to do it, from gravity-fed barrels, barrel waters, automatic waters. There are freeze-free insulated waters that work very well. One of my big things anymore, though, that I'm not going to say I don't have anyone do it. I'll say I do not like it, is to use a water heater that's been cut half in two and just be a free open, because what pigs are going to want to do, It doesn't matter if it's in the wintertime, summertime, whatever. They're going to stand in it. They're going to slosh in it. It just leads to some problems. So with that being said, make water work for you. I have a wide range of waters the kids use in the county, from totally automatic waters that won't freeze in heated buildings that are great, to mirror fount waters, to Ritchie waters that work also great. But water is important. If you don't have those available, make sure that you work hard and make sure those bears and gilts have water all the time, because it's very important for them to grow and survive and stay healthy.
You know, talking about the water barrels, one point that you might want to take, or that I might want to make, is that you know, when you're getting those water barrels, a dark colored water barrel is important. You know, if you have those, there's lighter colored barrels, and you can use those too, but those lighter colored barrels tend to get nastier. You know, they'll grow a little more algae or a little more bacteria, where a black barrel or a blue barrel doesn't have that in there. And also, during the winter, especially our winters, it's usually sunny. It may be cold, but those black barrels or a blue barrel will attract more heat, and most of the time will thaw out a little quicker. You know, and you can put those, you see in Hall County, I always see, or did see, the nipple in the middle of the barrel. And it was just because of the height of the pig. And so what we always do there in Hall County is we'll take either tires and stack them on top of each other with the rim inside them, and then put that barrel on top to keep moving up as the hog moves up. You know, as the hog grows, you can keep moving that water barrel up. You know, you want that water barrel, you want that nipple to be up at least shoulder height, so that pig can get a good drink. If it's sitting down on the ground and he's trying to have to squat down to drink it, he's trying to suck that gravity flow water in. It might work for you know, an automated water where the water's shooting up in his mouth, but in those gravity flow, there's not very much pressure. Another thing is try to keep that water barrel full. The fuller it is, the more pressure that it'll have on the nipple, and they'll get more water. The more water it gets, the faster they'll grow.
The same thing kind of holds true with feeders in feeder height. It probably needs to be adjustable. Even if you use a self-feeder, make it where their height, that they can adjust the height. I've seen bears that are fed flat, you know, that feeder set on the concrete slab or on the dirt from the get-go, and when he was weighing 250 pounds, he's doing funny things with his front legs to get there, and it's just not normal. I think that if you raise it up, they stand more natural, and they keep their width all the way apart. I've always wondered if bears get enough water out of gravity-fed barrels and stuff. I like to do a couple of things. One is I'll always like to clip a water cup, you know, an elevator cup feeder underneath that water so the drip and runoff will run in there and they can catch. But I also would encourage my kids that do that to at least hand water, if it's nothing more than stick a bucket in front of them once a day, where they get that volume of water and they kind of stretch everything back apart. I think it's pretty important.
We're going to have water pans out there, especially if you have those barrels. Those barrels are going to freeze. So early morning, you're going to have to go out and put water out in water pans or whatever, and try to get those hogs at least a drink in the morning.
I think it goes back to the simple fact that you nor I believe that lots of scenarios can't work. Make it work for you. Some scenarios require more work and is a little harder. But make it work for you. Make it work. And as your project grows, you may want to change. You may want to build things over the years and change things, and that's part of it because it needs to be a growing experience.
Thanks for your interest in these videos. Be sure and look up all 7 of the Back to Basics video series. If you have questions, feel free to contact your county agent or contact me directly at the email listed on the slide.